Are your young students or children in the process of learning to count? Research tells us there are in fact 5 principles they need to learn before they can count rationally. These 5 principles were clearly described by Rochelle Gelman from Stanford University in the late 70s. It seems like a long time ago, but they are still used today. In fact, if you live in the US, they are described in the Common Core and many of its variants across the country. In this episode, I'm going to briefly describe those principles and give you some tips to help your students or child develop those 5 skills. The first one is simply called the one-to-one principle. As young students learn to count, they must remember to associate each object with one number name. 1, 2, 3, 4. And this process is simply called one-to-one correspondence. Some young students or children may count objects more than once, and you can help overcome this by giving them things they can actually touch. Place them in a container or a bowl such as this and ask them to draw them out one at a time, counting each one. 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 trains. Experiences such as this reduces the chances of the students recounting any one object and helps them associate exactly one number name to exactly one object. The stable order principle. As young students learn to count, they must remember there's a conventional order for the number names that always begins with 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It is important that you give many opportunities for the students to count objects they can touch, and you need to model the correct order of the number names. Do this many times and in many different ways, and each time ask the students to repeat them back to you. And don't forget there are many engaging tunes and nursery rhymes that will help your students or children learn the correct order. And with practice, they will soon learn that the order of the names doesn't change. It remains stable. The next one is the cardinal principle. Let's look at these cubes again. How many cubes are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But how do I really know there are 6? I know there are 6 because I carefully counted each of them starting at 1, and when I counted the last one, I said 6. This can be really difficult for young students. They learn to count procedurally, but they also have to learn that the last one they say tells them the property of the group. It answers the question, how many? In mathematics, we call this property of a group its cardinality. For example, the cardinality of this group is 6, and young students need to be very confident with cardinality before they can explore other mathematical ideas such as addition. So how do you help students develop this idea? Well, you really just need to model it for them. So count it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 6 cubes. And 4, the order irrelevance principle. As young students begin to count, they start to learn that the order does not matter. For example, there are 5 cubes here. I could count from this end, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or I can count from this end, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or I can start from the middle and work my way out. They learn that it doesn't matter where you begin counting, the total size of the set remains unchanged. Now we could say that the number in this group is invariant, or does not vary when we count the group another way. And that's why it's sometimes called the invariant principle. To help students learn that the order is irrelevant, you need to use objects they can touch and demonstrate different ways to count starting at different positions. And finally, the abstraction principle. When we learn to count, we also learn what we can and cannot count. We can count tangible items like this ball, but we can also count things we can't touch, like maybe the number of times it bounces. Or maybe it's the sound it makes when it bounces. Or maybe it's simply the shadows that it casts. It's important too that students and children learn they can count objects that are not the same or related in any way. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is a principle they're going to learn over time, but just be sure to give them many rich experiences counting objects that are both tangible and intangible. So this is what I want you to do. First, remember that there are 5 principles the students need to learn before they can count rationally, and that is the one-to-one principle, the stable order principle, the cardinal principle, the order relevance principle, and the abstraction principle. And 2, these are all generally learned over time, but the students can learn them more quickly if you give them rich experiences counting different objects that they can and cannot touch. And be sure to model it for them. And finally, if you've seen value in this episode, leave some helpful comments and subscribe today to make sure that you never miss another learning opportunity with me. See you next time.